Hi guys, so this is my first time doing a live video, so this is also going to be a test to see how it works this way, if uploading and sharing is a bit easier than going through YouTube. And we're going to continue today on Psalm 91 discussion, and we're doing verses 5 and 6 today. Let's start with a recap on verse 4. So verse 4 says, He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and your buckler. And then verse 5, You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. Verse 6, Nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor of destruction that lays waste at noonday. So let's have a look at the different aspects, and then we'll have a discussion overall. Let's start with verse 5. The verse says, You shall not be afraid. That word afraid means yareh. That's how you say it in Hebrew, yareh. And it means to fear. So that's the word afraid. And then the following word says, of the terror. And that word terror, the root word is pachat. And what that means is something that causes to dread. So it's terror, it's something that causes you to dread. And it's an object that might be feared. So it's something that you fear. So terror is something that you fear, right? It's a noun. It's something that you fear. Let's continue. Then it says, the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. So that word night, the Hebrew word meaning means a twist away from light, like a spiraling stairs, a twist away from light. And that's the root word used there for night. The word is lahil, the Hebrew word. And for me, this refers to when the day is coming to an end and the day starts turning into night. So that's the word night. Then it says, nor of the arrow that flies by day. Now the arrow refers to sudden danger, calamity, or disease. It's anything that can pierce, a piercer. And it can also refer to pestilence, as I mentioned. And then it says by day. So in other words, it's not hidden. It's something that you can see, even though it happens suddenly. So that's verse 6. We're going to talk about that word nor just now. Let's just read that again. So you shall not be afraid, meaning to fear, of the terror. You should not be afraid of the terror. That is the thing that you are fearing by night. That's the turning of day into night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. So let's go to verse 6. It says, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. So that word nor means neither. So it's like it's saying you shall not fear, then it mentions something, then it says nor, meaning neither shall you fear this, neither shall you fear this. It's just another word for neither. So it says neither or nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness. So we've talked about pestilence and what that means. And that word walks in darkness, let's have a look at that. So that word could mean spreading, because it means going to and fro. So spreading, going to and fro, the root word of that walk is carry. Now the word destruction walks inward. Let's first look at darkness. Darkness means obscurity, and it can also refer to the darkest part of night, which would be midnight. And this could mean that it's something that you're not aware of, something that is hidden because it's obscurity. So it's saying, nor of the pestilence that walks, that's carrying, that's moving to and fro in the darkness, in the cover, in secret, in obscurity, something that you might not be aware of. And this could even be diseases in our own bodies that we are not aware of. And he's saying you should not be afraid of this. And it could also be things in the air, like the viruses in the air. You don't have to be afraid of the pestilence that walks in darkness, in secret, in obscurity, right? Let's continue. Nor neither of the destruction that lays waste. Now, destruction literally means destroying. Destruction, destroying. And the root word actually means to cut off. So the destruction that lays waste. And that word waste means to devastate. It refers to, the root word refers to violence, ravage, and desolation, oppression. So destruction that lays waste is just how it explains it, at noonday. And the noonday, we know that means midday, around 12 to 1 o'clock. Right, so it's saying, nor of the pestilence that walks in the darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Okay, so now we've discussed the various, the objects that it is referring to. Let's have the discussion. So verse 5 and 6 talks about 4 time periods or 4 times of the day. It mentions night, like I said, which the root word means twisting away, like a spiraling stairs twisting away from light. And this could mean when day is turning into night, right? Then it refers to day, the daytime when the sun is up, it's light, the morning has started. Then it talks about darkness. And like I said, darkness is talking about something that's concealed. It can talk about the darkest time of night, which is midnight. And then it says noonday, which is in the middle of the day, midday. So what is interesting about this is that, for me, this means that the one that makes God his refuge is protected 24 hours a day. When the sun is rising, when the sun is setting, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, he says, thou shalt not be afraid. So that was interesting for me, the different times of the day that it mentions. All right. Then it says 4 things that you shouldn't be afraid of. It mentions 4 things. So it says the terror, the arrow, the pestilence, and the destruction. And those things are very non-specific. And I think the reason for that is to cover just about any type of evil, any category of evil out there. So the writer made it non-specific so that we can apply it to whatever our terror is, to whatever our destruction, whatever we are facing. It can be applied to that because it's a very non-specific thing. So it covers basically all the categories of evil. Then the verses say, do not fear, thou shalt not fear. The verse says, thou shalt not be afraid, but we know that word means fear. And what it's actually saying, it's actually like a type of instruction and command saying, thou shalt not fear. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an instruction saying, you should not fear the terrors that are going to follow. And that's why it says nor, because it's just like a comma, listing the things that you should not be afraid of, that you should not be fearing. You should not be afraid of all the terrors that follow. And this verse for me is about fear versus faith. And I'm going to tell you more about that now. You see, it says, I want to read you a few scriptures. So, why not fear? Why does it say thou shalt not fear? Because remember the previous scriptures that we looked at, the previous verses says, he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall find refuge, and his truth shall be your shield and buckler. And that's why you shalt not be afraid. Remember, we first worked through that. And I think it's important that he put that first, because it says, if your relationship with me is in the right place, if you are dwelling in my presence, if there's intimacy between us, I'm going to cover you with my feathers. I'm going to use my truth to be your shield and your buckler. And that's why he says, now thou shalt not be afraid. You see, it doesn't give you the instruction without the safety net saying to you why. Why shalt thou not be afraid? Because of the previous verses. So if you haven't read those verses, go back to verse 1 to verse 4. Go and read that. Okay, I want to read Psalm 34, verse 4 and verse 19 to you quickly. I wrote it down for you. So Psalm 34, verse 19. Okay. Let's first read verse 4. I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all my fears. Verse 19 says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Remember that. We're going to talk about that now. Then Psalm 112 verse 7, he says, he, talking about the righteous, will not be afraid of evil things or evil tidings, and his heart will be steadfast, trusting in the Lord. He will not be afraid, the righteous. And then the last verse I want to read to you is Psalm 3, verse 24 to 26. He says, when you lie down, that's in the night, right? When you go to bed. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yes, you will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden terror, nor of trouble, there's that word nor again, from the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence. He will keep your foot from being caught. And that reminds me of the previous verse where he said, I will deliver you from the snare, like when a bird's foot might be caught in a snare. Yeah, he says, I will keep your foot from being caught. This is so awesome. Let's just get back to here. So, in those verses, especially in one of the Psalms, he says that he delivers the righteous, right? So he doesn't say that terrors won't happen, right? He doesn't say that the evil of mankind won't exist anymore, or that it won't happen. He says that the Lord delivers him from everyone. He's not saying there won't be terror, there won't be trouble, but that you need not fear these things when your refuge is in the Lord. And I think that is what this verse is about for me. He says, don't be afraid. Do not fear that terror, whatever your fear is. Maybe it's not the COVID-19 virus. Maybe it's something else that you are fearing. And he says, you do not be afraid of whatever your terror is. Thou shalt not be afraid. Why? And that is in your previous verses. Fear will keep us from operating in the faith that is necessary to receive his protection. Because remember, we take these verses by faith. And faith and fear cannot operate at the same time. They can't sit around the same table. You can't walk in faith and live in fear. So we need to replace our fears with faith. We need to be strong in the Lord, replace our fear with faith. I'm not sure on the live if I have pop-ups on WhatsApp, do you guys see that? I hope not. Thanks for all the waves. I appreciate it. Okay, I want to end with this. Let's continue. So verse 5 and verse 6 for me is an instruction not to allow fear in our hearts and not to allow it to remove us from the safety of dwelling in the shadow of his wings. Perfect love casts out fear. We know that the word of God says perfect love casts out fear. And I want to remind you today that he truly loves you. But this means that if you truly believe that he loves you, you should not be living in fear. Just think about that for a moment. If perfect love casts out fear, and you truly believe that he loves you, then you should not be living in fear. Because he does. He does love us. Are you secure in his love? That is the question. Are you spending time in his presence? Is there intimacy? Are you dwelling in the shadow of his wings? I think that for me, verse 5 and 6 was kind of like motivation, saying, you know what? There's going to be terrors. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be things happening around you. But you don't have to be afraid. because my love will cast out fear. You shall not be afraid. And I think also that's why he gave us the previous verses saying, this is my safety net. You don't have to be afraid because of those previous foundations that were read that he set for us. And out of that he says, that is why I can say to you, thou shalt not be afraid. And I want to leave you with that, guys, that if you have fear in your life, I want to encourage you, make sure that you are in perfect love. Make sure that your relationship with the Lord is in the right place. Make sure you're spending time with Him. And when you do get anxious, go to Him. The word says that when we get anxious, we should make our request known to Him, and that His perfect peace will guard our hearts and our thoughts. So He's there with open arms, but you need to believe that He loves you, because it's His love that casts out the fear. Amen. So I hope you guys were blessed, and thanks for watching. I hope the live went well. Thanks everyone that joined me, and I will see you again next week. Bye.